So I always think it's important to distinguish two different things. So one of them I call an aging society. And that is the fact because we got a fall in the birth rate, and Taiwan's birth rate's fallen a lot, and people are living longer. We have a lot more older people, a lot more people aged over 65. And that I call the aging society. There's a change in the age structure of the population. But I think it's also important to focus on what I call a longevity society. And the longevity society focuses not upon a change in the age structure of the population, but on the fact that you, the young and the middle age, can now expect to become very old. And that's never happened before, because we're not used to that. We have to focus much more into generational issues. There's the economy. When you've got lots of older people, there's not enough people working. There's a strain on pensions, health expenditure is high. And then, of course, with healthcare, we get a health system that's just overburdened by age-related diseases. But that's the aging society. If you focus on a longevity society, things are very different. From a social point of view, it's kind of everyone's younger. I'm 58, but I'm different from past generations of 58-year-olds because I've got more life ahead of me. So we can all do things differently. We can act differently. We can be younger for longer. Economically, a longevity society means we can work for longer. The first is we just think of an aging society as bad news. I mean, what's happened over the last 100 years is a huge increase in life expectancy. So we now mourn fewer children dying, fewer parents are snatched away in midlife, and more grandparents meet their grandchildren. That sounds great news to me. Then I think the second problem is we think of aging as about being old, and we think about being old as being about end of life. And so that has a number of consequences. The first is it's invariably negative. So when you talk about an aging society, you quickly end up talking about care homes and dementia. And they're very real problems, but that's not the only thing that is happening. And so we've got to think about aging not as about end of life, but it's about all of life. And the second thing I think we get wrong is we think that aging is fixed. We can't do anything about it. But we know that aging is malleable. We know that if you look, for instance, in my country, there's very big inequalities in health and life expectancy based on income. So we know that, your socioeconomic circumstances influence how you age. We know that if we eat better, exercise more, sleep well, have more purpose in our life, we live better and we're healthier for longer. I suspect in Taiwan it's the same in the UK. The government thinks that a newborn child has a 50% chance of reaching 92. And because of this, we also have to change not just business culture, but deep-seated society culture about how we think about aging, what is old. Like 70 now really isn't old. I mean, one of the things I always find fascinating is in the 20th century, we invented teenagers and we invented pensioners. We also created retirement in the 20th century. So we created that three-stage life: education, work, retirement. And now we need to create new ways of doing it. The logic here is that most governments, in response to the aging society, they're just raising the retirement age. They're trying to extend a three-stage life. But that's really not very helpful. So most people in the US, UK, etc., you start to see people leave work from 50 onwards. It's not at the state pension age, it's not a retirement age. And people start to lose their jobs at age 50 for a variety of reasons. Most lose their job because they're ill. They have to look after someone who's ill. Their skills are no longer relevant in the labour market, or firms have lots of ageist policies and say, right, I'm getting rid of older workers. And so if people start to leave work after 50 and you just keep trying to make retirement happen later, you're doing nothing to help people keep working for longer. So we've got to make people work for longer. But if you're living to 100, you've probably got a 60-year career. And, I don't know how much you like your job, but very few people want to do the same job in the same way for 60 years. In the 100-year life, we focus on 4 key assets. One is finance. The other is your productive assets, your skills and knowledge. The other is what we call your vitality assets. So that's your mental and physical health, and your friendships and your relationships. And then we also talk about your transformational assets, your ability to deal with change. I think those 4 assets are really important to think about your future self. what you can see emerging as you stretch out working career is a multi-stage life. And at different stages of your life, you will focus on different things, because I can't think of a single job that enables me to improve my finances, improve my health, improve my skills, improve my relationships, and provides a source of change. And if that's all the things you need to do over a long career and no one job provides it, by definition, you're going to have a multi-stage life. So it's a much more flexible career path for everyone. So it's kind of important to know what your own core values are, what makes this your journey. And I think the other thing that's really important in all this is to be always open. So, if for instance you're doing a particular role, make sure that all your contacts and your friends aren't closely related to that role. Because if you want to leave or you lose your job, you may need to find something outside of your community, outside of your network. And if you haven't got that community and network, then you have a problem. So I think building up a diversified network, always being interested in new ideas, such that as you get older, as things happen, you go, you know what, I'll give that a try. So some people are very good at transitions. Other people find them very uncomfortable. And if you've got a very diversified network, I think you're used to a little bit of uncomfortableness. But when you start to go outside of your comfort zone, you get more used to dealing with ambiguity and uncertainty. And that seems key for dealing with change and transition. As we get richer, we spend more and more on health. So put all that together, and yes, we will spend more and more on health as we focused around healthy aging. The problem we've got at the moment is actually we spend a lot of money on treating disease, not on keeping people healthy. But with age-related diseases, you've got to prevent people becoming ill. And there are these sort of chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, arthritis, dementia. And as soon as you get one, you're then more likely to get another one. And once you start thinking about preventative health, it tends not to happen in the hospital. It happens outside the hospital. So governments do spend a lot more on preventative health. But it isn't just governments. I think this is also where there's a huge business opportunity, because so much of our health is driven by the food and drink we eat. It's about the environment we live in. It's about the ability to do exercise and be active. So I think there's an enormous business opportunity here. And normally when you hear about business opportunities in aging, it's always about care homes and adult diapers and things of that form. But I think that's a mistake. That's what I call the silver economy. We saw developed in the 20th century a life insurance sector. In the 20th century, there was a high chance of dying in middle age, and you wanted your family to be financially secure. But with these long lives, the danger now is not of dying early, but of dying late, of outliving your money. So there's an enormous opportunity for what I call living insurance. So there's this evergreen economy, which I think is enormous, which is the most valuable thing to us, because in a world where the young and middle age can expect to become the old, the most valuable health challenge is now to age well. And it's worth, billions and trillions of dollars. First of all, there's clearly a lot of ageism. There's plenty of evidence that older workers, particularly when they apply for jobs, are less likely to get jobs. They're more likely to get fired. So there's lots and lots of ageism. And, if you look at the next US election where both candidates are pretty old, it's clear that, it's not just a blanket prejudice against older people. So there's possibilities. I think that's what I want to try and stress. Take the case of Taiwan, where the fertility rate is very low. There just won't be many young workers coming through. And one thing firms do is focus on those young workers. How do I get them? But you are then ignoring all these older workers, many of whom will be looking to change jobs or to upgrade. And so more and more workers, more and more firms are going to have to focus on older workers, because it's going to be an absolutely key competitive advantage in Taiwan, given the aging society. So the question is, how do you hold on to those older workers? And also, how do you do it in a way that's fair for the whole workforce? Now, there's a whole bunch of age-friendly policies firms can do. How do we use the different skills of young and older people? I think it's really important, and this is going to be very difficult for lots of firms, try and move away from a very hierarchical structure. So we need to create this age-diverse structure that encourages innovation, that brings out the sort of the new skills that younger people have with the wisdom and experience that older people have. And that's going to be a big change.